Hey folks, it's Tom here on the channel of 3 Basket Living. I want to welcome you guys back, and if this is your first time here, I want to welcome you as well. This is part of my, I guess, series that I got going on concerning building this vegetable garden from scratch in clay soil, heavy clay soil, with the intentions of going to a no-till back to Eden style garden. And I have been waiting and chomping at the bits to get back into my garden here behind me because I got things that I need to do or want to do this fall and winter. I'll eventually get it done. I'll just have to wait, but I need my ground to dry out, so I'm not able to move forward on that, and I was going to document it, but I'll just have to do it, as it gets colder. And I've done it before. I continue to do it. I'm out here in the wintertime, even when it's snowing on the ground, and still working on my garden for the next season and developing it. It brings me to this point of what we're going to talk about today. About the lies, the misinformation, or the lack of real information when it comes to this no-till wood chip covering or back to Eden style garden. That's what we're going to talk about, because I got a little bit of rain coming on me right now. I got a little break here and it's still just misting on me. So I'm going to grab my chair, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to grab my notes, and we're going to talk about this, because this is going to be important before we move forward, because it's going to work out for the better. Because sure as crap, as I move forward and tell you exactly what I've done on my garden, somebody's going to just skip through, take little bits and pieces, and try to run with it and do what I do. And I really don't want you to do that or encourage you to do that and have failure, because there's some things that may be missing, or I'm going to advise you to do different than me. So stick around, I'll grab a chair, and I'll be right back. I have watched the Back to Eden garden. Hello, Charlotte. I have watched it probably at least 4 to 5 times in the last 6 to 7 years. And I just watched it again 2 nights ago because I couldn't find my previous notes when I had watched it before. So, what stirred, yes, okay, you're going to stay with me? What stirred me to want to go over this is the fact that I am seeing all kinds of videos, and a lot of you people are. I mean, this back to Eden, no-till wood chip gardening stuff, this fad, this phase, has been pretty prominent, in the YouTube land for some time now. And I come across these videos, and I'm going to just try to pick a few recent ones because I just continue to see it, and I'm thinking, no. But one of them that comes to mind is a couple down there in Mississippi that they had given it a try. And I think they only did so for 1 season, I think. But anyway, come back out after their try and saying, with some sort of catchy title, saying it doesn't work. All right, and that puts an impression in people's mind, because when you continue to see that over and over and over again, that people are out there that had hopes of it being successful and working, and then they see all these titles and hear these videos that it won't work, it's going to discourage them for even looking into it a little bit further. So they went on to say that it won't work down south, down there in Mississippi. And I think they also included that it won't at least work for them. But then you got people up north, up in Wisconsin, that I just heard about 2 weeks ago, that were talking about it. And they said that it won't work up north in Wisconsin. You got to be farther south. Well, I know some people not too far from me. They gave it a try as well in the Midwest, in the Ozarks. And they gave it a try, and it failed for them as well, and they said it wouldn't work for them. Now, they didn't say it wasn't going to work on their soil or in the Ozarks or north-south or anything like that, but they just said it failed and it ain't going to work for them. for their reasons. So everywhere you go, north, south, east, west, and in the Midwest, people are saying it won't work. And that's untrue. I am pretty confident it will work in all those locations. So that's why I want to talk about this, because this is going to be important. The reasons, okay, for it not working, based on my observance of their content or their videos, is number one, lack of information, or information being left out, no understanding of what we're trying to accomplish or what we're doing, and possibly because they didn't watch the Back to Eden Garden. Or some people may have watched it, and I'm going to cover that just a bit more. The failures are not due to the wood chips. They're not due to the wood chips. It's not due to the Back to Eden or no-till gardening method, and it's not due to the geographical location for the most part, unless it comes down to the availability of natural resources. Then it possibly could be geographical. It's the lack of knowledge, understanding, lack of patience, lack of common sense. It's misinformation or bits of truth without more information that is necessary to understand, or it's due to just doing quick glancing. People watch videos or read books and they just kind of glance over it and they just get this idea and they run and go with it, and they're going to have big failures almost every single time. And the reason I say that is I'm going to focus on, there's some reasons why they consider it a failure. But I think it's fair to say, based on what I'm seeing, that the number one complaint or the cause for failure is the weeds. The weeds and grasses. That has got nothing to do with the Back to Eden style method or no-till, and it's got nothing to do with the wood chips. All right? Let me bring up a good point. And anybody that wants to do this, I want to challenge you to do this if you're gardening. Put the tiller, leave it in the shed, take the tractor and plow, leave it in the shed or the shop, and don't even bring it out the next season. And wait till the end of next season and let me know how many weeds and grasses that you have coming up. It's the absence of that tilling that we've gotten accustomed to, or that plowing to control the grasses and weeds. That's the change. It's got nothing to do with bringing in the wood chips. It's the fact that you're trying to go to a no-till garden and the absence of the plowing to be able to control those weeds and grasses or till. That's where the issue lies. It's not the Back to Eden garden. It's not the wood chips. So keep that in mind. We're going to cover more on that because I'm going to go into more detail on that in an upcoming video. But I just want people to understand that. The reasons that people want a Back to Eden garden. I like the reason. Anybody that's ever tried it and failed miserably, they still got good reasons. You know, the reasons for wanting to do it are good, I believe, for the most part. So what are the reasons that we want to do it? We would like to suppress weed or grass or unwanted. See, I got to say unwanted because, you know, I might get these weed freaks out there that, oh, those are good, those are beneficial or medicinal. Yeah, I get it. But I can go outside of the gardening and obtain the same weeds and grasses if they're beneficial or healthy for me. Maybe I want to have a little bit more control in my garden and a little bit more organization, even if it's just for my, you know, aesthetic appeal. I get that. So I don't want to freak you out because I don't, and make you think I don't appreciate beneficial, what we call weeds or grasses, that they have medicinal purposes. I am in favor of those things, but I'm in control of my garden. I'm the tender, the master, so to speak, and have the job of managing it. And I want those things outside of my garden obtainable, and I don't want them in my garden. I don't know why I got into that. Anyway, we want to suppress unwanted growth. We want to combat drought, less labor, especially as we get older in our age, which also coincides with that, is freeing up more time so that we're not so much of a slave to our gardens, you know, and that frees up more time for other projects or chores within our property or in our homestead. That's a good reason. Less dependent on fuels and equipment. That's a darn good reason. Healthier soil and soil food web, another great reason. And also along with that, we get in place decomposition with those wood chip coverings or applications. When we get to our product, when we build our garden, we don't want fast decomposition. Okay, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. The other thing I want to bring up, because if you are a prepper, and if you don't like being labeled as a prepper, but you are more of a prepared mind individual, you'd like to take a little bit more responsibility into when it comes to what we put in our mouth, in our food and our water. You'd like to have a little bit more control over that, or you'd like to be a little bit more self-sustaining and more self-sufficient. This is the garden to have. This is the way to go about it. I believe that wholeheartedly. So especially people that are confident enough to take on the label as preppers, you tinfoil hat wearers. I get called that all the time. This is the way to go. Hands down. And if you follow along, you're going to find that out, I believe. Don't listen to people just basically telling you to go get a bunch of wood chips and say, hey, proof's in the pudding, especially in one season, from springtime to the to fall or mid-fall, and saying, oh, there's proof. No. You can throw 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of wood chips just about anywhere, film it in the springtime, and come back and do it in the fall. It looks good. But remember, the number one complaint or the number one issue that people have is the overwhelming overtake of the garden with grasses and weeds or unwanted plants. So what I want to do right now, okay, I want to go over some Back to Eden key points of the documentary. When it comes to a no-till Back to Eden style garden, utilizing wood chips as a covering, it pretty much starts or stems from that Back to Eden documentary with Paul Gauci. And these are the things that I want to touch on. In case you have never watched that documentary from start to finish, and even if you have watched it from start to finish, but there's a good chance that you missed out on all the vital key information to gain more understanding of what we're trying to do here. And that's just human nature. We're all susceptible to it. Because when you watch that documentary, man, you see all them beautiful fruits and vegetables just flowing with water or juices. And then you got all the people in the documentary, and even after the documentary, on YouTube, biting into it, testifying to how sweet and juicy it is. And through human nature, we get tunnel vision and we focus on that, because we're kind of the type of society nowadays that we focus on end results. We're this want now kind of society, and we focus on what we can have. We don't think about the processes that it takes to get something that we desire or we lust after. We just want, and we focus and key in on that. That's why marketing and advertising is so powerful. So by doing so, because the first time I watched it, I did the same thing. By doing so, we miss out on a lot of information that if you catch on to it, these people that are just telling you, go get a bunch of wood chips, you'll be like, no, it ain't quite working like that. It will work. It can and will work, but here's our goal. Because of the type of people we are, we're human beings, and we want things now. We're going to have to go through the same kind of time frames and experiences that Paul Gauci went through. And I'm going to tell you right now, we need to be thankful that Paul had the faith, the experience, and patience at the time of that release of that documentary, so that we don't have to, and we don't. So if you want to do it just like these people just saying, go get a bunch of wood chips, listen to this, okay? Because this all comes from the documentary. I watched it again 2 nights ago and took my notes again. It is important to understand that Paul Gauci grew up, I guess, and came from the Los Angeles basin in Southern California. And he went and moved his family up in the state of Washington, and he moved it on the drier state of the Washington, on the other side of the mountains, where they don't get all that rain. I guess they do on the other side. Okay? That was back in 1979. That is like 38, 39 years from today. This is October of 2018. Or is this September 1st now? I don't remember. But this is October of 2018. That's like 38, 39 years ago. Okay? At that time, because of what Paul came from, he grew up in a family with the knack of gardening and running orchards and stuff like that. One of Paul's first priorities was to establish and get his orchard going. That's one of the first things he did. I think he built his house too, if it wasn't already there. But that's one of the first things he did, is establish and get his orchard planted and going. And in doing so, when he went out into the forest, I guess maybe he was just thinking about things. And he went out in the forest and just acknowledging or recognizing how lush and green and moist it stays all the time. That's where he discovers, what's going on the forest floor. He has his spiritual enlightenment and feeding from God to recognize that he could do the same thing. So that's when Paul started, and he brought in all them wood chips, back in 1979, maybe 1980, and covered his whole orchard on it. But here's a key thing that a lot of people miss. During this documentary, Paul also, acknowledges, states, talks about that he had been doing traditional modern-day gardening just like the rest of us have done, with a tiller, maybe a plow, for his fruits and vegetables in his garden. And he did so for 17 years. That's how he collected all that rock that he puts in this pile that he calls his little rock shrine. For 17 years, Paul has been tilling his garden. And given what we know about Paul, he had probably been introducing the organic materials, because that's the way he believes in going organic. He'd probably been feeding that soil, all that chicken manure and decomposition beddings and stuff like that into his garden, just like the rest of us, a lot of us do, when we go to till every fall or spring. 17 years. That brings us up to about 1996, if you do the math. In 1996, and he discusses this in the documentary, he's like, it dawned on him one day when he went out to his orchard, and he talks about he could almost dig down with his hand up to his elbow. And he just kind of hit himself in the head, metaphorically speaking, saying, what the heck is he doing? Busting his rump, breaking his back, running that tiller and doing that modern day gardening. All them years, for 17 years. And then that's when he started implementing the same principles, the same technique, utilizing the wood chips into his garden. Now, that's around 1996. The documentary comes out and gets released in 2011. That's when we, as the rest of society, gets to observe and see and notice what Paul's got going on out there. So from 2011 to 1996, that is still 15 years. We are seeing the results of 15 years in the garden and probably 30 years of the orchard. That's what we're seeing in that documentary. 15 years minimum. So this is why I say it's key to understand these things when people just tell you to go get a bunch of wood chips. And we want to grow food. We don't want to wait 15 years. I don't want to wait 15 years, and we don't have to. Thank goodness to Paul's patience, experience that he's had, and faith in doing and continuing to do what he did. Very key to understand when you come across these videos with these catchy titles. So let me cover a couple other things that Paul mentions in there. Okay, in case you have no intentions of going to watch it, but you still want to do this. Number one is he does acknowledge that it's all about the covering of the wood chips. Remember before I'd cover this again about the wood chips, because ultimately when we get our gardens established, we don't want them wood chips to just break down real fast because they're providing a covering. We want it to be kind of a slower process so we don't have to continue to bring wood chips in every year or twice a year, and as time goes on we have to bring them in less and less. We want to work a little bit like nature. Paul acknowledges, like many others, that the ground is a living organism. Where there's no cover, Wood chip covering, where there's no cover, there's loss. Same thing in nature. He also acknowledges, just as many others have that I've read, seen, or heard, many others state, that in nature, undisturbed, it takes somewhere around 100 years for nature to create 1 inch of topsoil. I can't prove or debunk that. I don't know, but I've just heard it many, many times from people smarter than me. He acknowledges in the Back to Eden documentary, wood chips with branches and leaves and needles. Paul is surrounded by pine needles and pine trees and needles, because there's still this misinformation out there that pine needles transfer the acidity of the tree, desires for more acidity, and it transfers that into the soil. That has been proven to be untrue. That the pine needles, if I'm not mistaken, are a neutral media falling down onto the ground. They don't transfer that acidity. Paul says so in the documentary, that needles are in there. He also admits and talks about he puts compost on his garden about every 3 to 4 years, and that time expands as time goes on. 2 to 3 years, and then it went to 3 to 4 years, and it continues to expand. He says that in the Back to Eden garden. Paul describes and shows and admits that he has the occasional weeds in his garden as well, and it's shown in the documentary. And he also acknowledges, and I totally agree, you're not going to stop the wind from blowing. The wind's going to blow some seed into your garden. You're not going to ever probably be totally weed free. And I would add on to that, you're probably not going to stop the birds from flying into the garden or just flying over, making deposits. And I'm going to talk about the biggest contributors to the weed and grass problem, because that is the number one complaint when it comes to people making the claim that it doesn't work, is not being able to control the grass and weeds. And we'll talk about that in the next video. Paul also states that the process speeds up with the application of manures onto the garden and with the wood chips. He clearly states it in the documentary back in 2011. All right, and I presume because he's already got, at that time, he's already got 30 years of experience, but he had 15, 16 years of experience and physical evidence that he got to see with his eyes what's going on in his orchard. And then he realized that in his garden, by introducing the manures, the process speeds up a little faster. He clearly states it right in there. I bring this up because there's a couple out there that I tried to reach out to. They had just put a video like 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, and they put a title of something like The Back to Eden Secret Revealed. And they focused on the secret is the manure. Yes, it's going to help speed up the process, but that is not the secret. It is not the secret, because I guarantee you, I can't guarantee anything, but I am pretty confident they're going to have some of the same issues that other people have if they just throw the wood chips on and go with the manures. There's a good probability of that taking place. So the bottom line is, we can have, it's going to be successful north or south, east, west, midwest, just about anywhere, if the sources of the resources can be obtained, some natural resources. And we can have what Paul has, thankfully. Again, thankfully to his patience, his faith, and his experience in that documentary. And this is going to be very beneficial, and for you folks that have kind of steered away from it, given up hope because of all these other videos that show that they failed. Back to Eden method, wood chip gardening method, no-till method is not the reason for failure. It's their failure. And not really so much their failure, it's the lack of understanding, knowledge, and information that caused the failure. Because these aren't stupid people. These people that I'm talking about on making these videos, well, there might be one or two, but they're not stupid. Okay, they got some sense. They just got caught up in it. They probably heard of a friend, another friend out west, that you know, just kept pushing it, kept pushing it, kept pushing it, just go cover your ground with wood chips and voila. Sure, the voila can come 10, 12, 15 years later, but that's not what we want. We want to grow food now, especially when we're in our 50s and 60s. We don't want to wait 15 years before we can have something close to what Paul's got. This is why I wanted to talk about this, and this is why I wanted to This is why I want to encourage you to go watch the Back to Eden Garden for yourself with pen and paper. Don't take my word for it. Hear for yourself, and I want to encourage you not to get too caught up. You know, this is your first time watching it, and if you're watching it again, try not to focus on the thing that we desire for ourselves on our own property in our own gardens, and listen in and key in on this, and you'll tie these timelines in yourself and you'll understand some things. But I still want to remind you, we don't have to go that long. I'm not, and the reason I want to go through this is because of all that misinformation or missing information that people are putting out on these videos, because I'm almost there. I'm practically there now, but not to my satisfaction. And I believe that every one of you that want to do this and have done it and already failed, you can have this quicker than I'm getting it myself. I truly believe that. So stick around, come back, and we're going to continue this on. I'm trying to do this systematically so nobody just skims through, takes a little few bits here and there and just runs out there and does some things that I've done or what some other people are saying and just throwing a bunch of wood chips, even with the manure on there. I think I can help some people to get a better understanding. Ultimately, you got to make the decisions for yourself, but I'm hoping to edify some of the truths that are already out there and show you why this lie and untruths are bahooky. So have a nice day. May all your branches become full of fruit, and I hope to see you next time. Whoop!